They called about 80 minutes ago. They want you to take the money, drive north on the 405. They will call you on the portable phone with instructions in about 40 minutes. One person only. They were very clear on that, or I'd go with you. One person only. What happened to your jaw?
Oh, nothing.
Here's the money. And the phone. Please, dude, follow whatever instructions they give.
All right.
Her life is in your hands.
Man, don't say.
Mr. Lebowski asked me to repeat that. Her life is in your hands.
Yeah.
Her life is in your hands, dude. And report back to us as soon as it's done.
Perhaps only the true aficionados, the true fans of The Big Lebowski will remember that along with the dude in that scene and in this film was the great Philip Seymour Hoffman. And he's the focus of tonight's edition of the movie program on public radio, KCBX, broadcasting from San Luis Obispo, California. Across the aisle from me, looking incredible tonight, it's the one, the only Robert Gordon Whiteford.
And across the aisle from me, your friend and mine, the unchallenged czar of film on the Central Coast. I'm choking on my own platitudes here tonight. A man I am proud to call friend. Of course, I am talking about James Richard Dee.
Good to see you, Bob.
Good to see you too, Jimmy.
We're talking in all three names tonight due to Philip Seymour Hoffman. Well, the fact that as of the taping, not the taping, but of this program, we're live here at KCBX, but Philip Seymour Hoffman finally getting that Oscar nomination for his great work in Capote. And the reason we really wanted to focus on Philip Seymour Hoffman is, actually, Bob, I think he's going to get the Oscar. It's not so much for this one performance, but in preparing for tonight's program, just looking at the body of work of this amazing actor, I was we're first thinking about the idea of character actors, because in his early career and just his persona, he seems to be a character actor, a person who's kind of on the sidelines and always a colorful and interesting character. But now that he's in the forefront, now he is the starring role in Capote. And looking back at his work, he's far more than a bit player. He's far more than a character actor, which I don't want to speak down about character actors, because they have their own.
Some of our favorite people are character actors.
I was wondering if people had seen, or if our listeners had seen Capote and looked at Philip Seymour Hoffman and said, wow, where have I seen him before? And the truth is, he has starred in about 40 films, and some of them just holding down the entire film. And just looking into his history as well, Philip Seymour Hoffman working a lot on Broadway. He was nominated for 2 Tony Awards. And in looking back at his work, Bob, I was so fascinated by, even in the smallest role, you can't take your eyes off him. In the smallest role, he's utterly convincing. And what we will display for you tonight on tonight's program, Philip Seymour Hoffman, truly a chameleon. I mean, today, Bob, when I was looking at some of his films, I had to stop. I go, is this the same guy? It kind of reminded me, in a strange way, Robert Duvall, where he could play the lawyer in The Godfather, and then he can play the country singer in Tender Mercies, and both utterly believable. They seem like a different person. In going through Philip Seymour Hoffman's films, he is extremely different, and to the point where you can't believe it's the same guy.
You know, Jim, when we decided we were going to do a show on Philip Seymour Hoffman, I've kind of sat and I've really thought about a few key films that I've seen over the years. And what I find is, I have to say that he may be the finest. I think he's moved up now as maybe the finest actor of his generation of film. He's been making movies since 1991, and in the span of this time, he's worked with Al Pacino, Alec Baldwin, Robert De Niro, Paul Newman. He's been in great ensemble cast films like State and Maine, Magnolia, Big Lebowski, Happiness, and he's worked with directors like Paul Thomas Anderson. He shined in Boogie Nights, as well as Magnolia. Todd Solondz in Happiness, State and Maine, David Mamet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my goodness, it's just amazing the amount of people he has worked with. He worked with Paul Newman again and Joanne Woodward in the outstanding HBO miniseries that came out this year called Empire Falls. Again, a great ensemble cast. Ed Harris, Helen Hunt, Robin Wright Penn. I mean, just to name a few people that are in this. And he shines. I mean, his part in that was quite small, but he shines brightly. And, he's worked with Spike Lee. I mean, man, this guy has done a lot in a relatively short period of time. And what I really like about him, Jim, is, one, he is a chameleon. He immerses himself in his roles. It's so hard to... How can you believe he's so convincing as Truman Capote, and yet there's a few months before he's playing a totally different person, say in Red Dragon, or playing Lester Bangs in Almost Famous, and you're going, is this the same guy? And the answer is yes, it is. And the other thing I really love about him is he's not some pretty boy. He's every man.
He's every man, and yet, like you said, he immerses himself in the roles to the point where it's truly like he's not acting, and he makes it seem very, very easy. And Bob, that's the same conclusion I came to today when I was looking over his entire filmography. He's been in great company, and I guess I feel really good for him that he is in the forefront of Capote with the Oscar nomination. The film has a Best Picture nomination, and it's almost like he's been real close. Either he was in Twister, he was in Cold Mountain, he's been in some big films, but usually maybe a smaller role. But then he's been in a number of very small personal films where he holds the entire film in his hands, essentially holds it up. And he's working with great people, and I'm really happy for him that he's finally getting the acknowledgement he deserves. And I think Hollywood and the film going public in general have recognized this. It just hasn't been blatant. It's one of those guys that sort of is invisible almost, just because he is such a chameleon and he becomes whoever he's playing.
Well, it's interesting, Jim. You watch him over the years. Boogie Nights, a film we'll be talking about a little later. Here he is with Mark Wahlberg, big star, and they have a couple of really beautiful scenes together. And you're going, who is this guy with Wahlberg?
Yes.
Then a few years later in Magnolia, another Paul Thomas Anderson film, just to pull that one out of my hat, he has a scene with Tom Cruise. And you're going, who is this guy? And then he's got a scene with Jason Robards, and you're going, who is this guy? And then he's got a scene with Julianne Moore. All three scenes are really powerful, and you're going, wait a minute, who is this guy? What's he doing here?
And how is he holding his own again with these great actors?
Yeah, Cruise is a big star. Robards, in his final performance, one of the greatest actors of his or any generation. Julianne Moore, one of the finest actresses working today. And you're saying, while acknowledging their presence, you're going, who is this guy? Who is this guy holding his own with them? And tonight we'll delve into who that guy is.
Let's go back to perhaps a film that you may not have remembered Philip Seymour Hoffman in. We go back to, I believe, about his fourth or fifth film from 1992, and he plays George in Scent of a Woman, along with Al Pacino and is it Chris O'Donnell. In this film, he's barely out of his 20s, I believe. He's a college kid. He's kind of a rascal. He's kind of a troublemaker. But as we were talking before the show, he has that sort of Eddie Haskell charm where you know he's up to no good, but he's a charmer, too. Here is a scene from Scent of a Woman. It's Chris O'Donnell and Philip Seymour Hoffman as they're watching a prank that's going to be played in the film, and a woman discovers them watching this prank being pulled off, and Philip Seymour Hoffman uses his charm to get out of it. This is from Scent of a Woman.
That's my boys. What are you doing?
Keep your voice down! I'll tell you about it in the morning!
Miss Hunsaker,
George,
you have a nice day?
why all the noise?
I'm messing around with Chaz.
Good evening, Charles.
Miss Hunsaker.
What was that?
I don't know, ma'am.
Well, who were those boys?
Oh, who knows?
What were they doing? Charles?
Did you make this scarf yourself?
No, George, I bought it.
Yeah, because it's a beauty.
Thank
it really
you, George.
is. In case I don't see you before the Thanksgiving holidays, why don't you give me one of your big hugs?
Oh, George.
Please?
Good evening, boys.
Come on.
It's a very young Philip Seymour Hoffman in Scent of a Woman, and you could hear that sort of rascally charm. And, here he is very early on in his film career, and he's in a very big movie.
Well, there's a couple of things that are very interesting about this film. I'm not a big fan of the film per se.
Nor am I.
But one thing that is interesting, it was something he said about it. I was doing a little research for the show, and at that time, even though he had been a classically trained actor, he'd had a couple of movies under his belt, he was working in a deli counter in a supermarket when he got the role. And he would say, he says that this is the film that made him a working actor. He had gone through all these other terrible jobs, that actors have when they're struggling. Of course, de rigueur waiter job at a restaurant. And I, reading his quotes on that, or his impressions of it, it only made me like him more. Because, again, he's a real guy. He's had real struggles. It took him a while to break into films. And when he finally got his chance in, basically a throwaway supporting role. I mean, this is an Al Pacino vehicle all the way. And I guess Chris O'Donnell was being cultivated as the star of tomorrow outside of this film. And while he's got a career and he's not a bad actor, Philip Seymour Hoffman grabs this one, throwaway role and makes something happen where from now on, down the line, people have noticed him. Producers, agents, screenwriters, people are aware of him now. Directors. And now he's a working actor. And that's why this film is very significant in his career.
And as you were saying, Bob, before about his, dare I say, his looks. I mean, he isn't the most dapper, handsome guy, even though, as we'll show you a little bit later on, I mean, he can play straight roles, gay roles. He can play a person who is extremely confident and aggressive, as well as a person who is a complete shell of a man. And we've seen in his roles, many different performances, and yet, it's his persona, it's his charisma that makes these roles so watchable and so memorable. And, it's almost as if his looks are irrelevant. I mean,
totally. I think that's a great point, Jim, because he's utterly believable. Several movies he's done, he's the romantic lead, and you're not sitting there going, this guy isn't good looking. It's not registering at all. It means nothing because there's something very fascinating and charismatic and deep about his characters that you're just in for the ride. You're already hooked, and it doesn't matter.
And another reason why I did mention that you may not think about him is when he is playing some of the supporting roles. He is so good. He's so convincing. He's sort of like someone who comes on the set and utterly believable, goes off, and you just think, oh, it was just, like you said, a regular guy on the movie set playing a role, and, he's on and he's off. But still, it registers. He's real. He seems he's there, and whatever character he plays, he is there. Before we play our next clip, which we're going to get on to Boogie Nights, in between Scent of a Woman and Boogie Nights, he was working hard. Philip Seymour Hoffman, in a whole bunch of movies in smaller roles from 1992, 1993 up to Boogie Nights, which was 1997. Just to give you some of the titles of the films he was in: after Son of a Woman, Joey Breaker, My Boyfriend's Back, Money for Nothing, The Getaway, The Yearling, which is a TV film, When a Man Loves a Woman, Nobody's Fool,
which was a great film. I loved that movie.
15-Minute Hamlet, and a film called Sydney, and Twister. Here he is in a big blockbuster film in a small role, and it was right after Twister in 1996. He got together with Paul Thomas Anderson in the interesting and controversial Boogie Nights.
I would say Boogie Nights is one of the best movies of the 90s, in my personal opinion. Paul Thomas Anderson really nails that kind of weird mixture of innocence and perversity that was the porn, the blossoming porn industry in Southern California in the late 1970s. This film has got a great ensemble cast. Of course, we're talking about Mark Wahlberg as Dirk Diggler. He's wonderful in this. He brings a certain bit of innocence and, and just basically he's no good at anything. Well, but he is good at something. And Julianne Moore is wonderful in this film. Burt Reynolds in an Academy Award-nominated performance. This is the film that really got him back on track as well. And even though he fought tooth and nail not to do this, he was terrific. Let's not forget also one of our other favorite everyman stars, William H. Macy, is in this as well. But again, Philip Seymour Hoffman shows up, and he's just done Twister. So he could do, which was a big hit in 96, and he could very easily have gone into the mainstream mold, just working in one, snooze-a-thon after another, but he takes the challenge. And he's terrific in this. From Scent of a Woman, we had the scene where he's like some kind of a cocksure, ne'er-do-well, Eddie Haskell type Ivy League fellow. In this one, he's kind of a pudgy, insecure, very humane, but at the same time, really insecure. I think it doesn't even quite do it justice. He's a closeted cameraman that works in the porn industry. And, while shooting all the scenes, he finds that he's falling in love with Mark Wahlberg, who, of course, is utterly oblivious. And he brings something kind of beautiful to all of this, because there's all the seedy stuff going on. And without giving away too much of the film, I probably have already, but he brings some innocence to the film, some humanity, and it touches Wahlberg as well, but not in the way I'm sure Wahlberg wanted to be touched.
No, and the other thing that I want to get to, and it's evident in this clip from Boogie Nights, is Philip Seymour Hoffman, as any great actor, lets it all hang out. He lets the emotions run, just everything is right there for you to see. And, I guess I characterize it with an actor who allows you to see him with his pants down, basically. And Philip Seymour Hoffman in this film is utterly vulnerable. And, here you are and you're gay and you're on the work crew or the film crew of, straight porno. I would say that would be kind of a lonely job. But he really gives the character depth. And as you said, Bob, in Boogie Nights, you have this big ensemble cast, and he shines. It's like, that's also a toast to the writer-director, Paul Thomas Anderson. But the fact that you've got all these stars around you, and you still strike a chord because you are real, you're human, and boy, in this film, he is fragile.
That word you used, Jim, that was the one that eluded me earlier. Vulnerable. Everything about his character in this film is vulnerable. The way he dresses, the way he has his little tics, he pushes his hair around. He reminds me, he happens to be gay, but he could be any person who's not sure of themselves and is, has to take the leap of faith and express their feelings, knowing full well that things are not going to go their way. His performance and his character really touched me deeply. And what's interesting, Jim, in a lesser actor's hands, his character could have been utterly forgettable.
I agree with you.
Almost, or a butt of jokes or something, but he brought something really special in this small part.
Let's listen to a clip from Boogie Nights. This is Philip Seymour Hoffman as Scotty, and he grabs Mark Wahlberg, who is Dirk Diggler, the porn king. And Scotty has fallen in love with him over the course of being a cameraman. And Scotty wants to impress Dirk with a new car that he bought, and he's also going to take the plunge. This is Philip Seymour Hoffman, Mark Wahlberg from Boogie Nights.
When you get by the lights, close your eyes. Okay? All right, just follow my voice. All right? Here. Here. Just keep coming. All right, open them. This is it.
It's cool.
Yeah. You want to get inside?
When did you get this?
Yesterday. Well, actually, I had it painted yesterday, so it might still be kind of sticky. Or
This is great, man.
Yeah.
This is really great.
you want to go for a ride? Or
Wait. Fuck, hell, how much time is that?
I'm sorry, sir.
What the hell is the matter with you?
I'm sorry.
Why did you do that, Scotty?
You look at me sometimes.
What?
I want to know if you like me.
Well, of course. Yeah, I like you, Scotty.
Can I kiss you?
Scotty, I don't...
Please, can I kiss you on the mouth?
No!
Please let me.
Scotty!
I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to grab you like that or scare you or
It's
anything.
all right, man.
Do you want to kiss me or
Scotty,
no?
what's the matter with you?
Forget it. I'm really drunk. Really, I am. I'm out of my head.
Oh. That's from Boogie Nights, Mark Wahlberg and Philip Seymour Hoffman in a very awkward scene, in the fact that, he tries to show his affection for him, and boy, it just goes haywire. He probably gets the rejection he was expecting, which makes it all the more sad. But I was also noticing, Bob, in a number of the films that we're going to be discussing tonight, is Hoffman's willingness to be awkward. Like you said, vulnerable, but boy, there's a number of scenes in a number of these films where they are so awkward, but to get that awkwardness to feel authentic in a film, I think also takes great direction and great acting. But to capture those times that just don't feel right, that are kind of uncomfortable, that kind of make you squirm, are I want to say part of a lot of these roles that he plays, especially in Boogie Nights, like that one we just heard, and it's just adds to that humanity that we're talking about. And
absolutely. This part, Jim, so easily could have just turned into, a one and out kind of a lame, shallow caricature. Everything about him, the way he looks, we were talking off the air, it's, he wears that shirt that's like 3 sizes too small, his belly's hanging out, and his hair's long and greasy, and he's wearing those funny shoes. And you think, well, if it just stopped there, but no. He injects humanity into it. Scotty's got all these like little sensitive tics and stuff. He's kind of tipping us off well in advance where he's coming from, and nobody notices him.
That's right.
He's just sitting in the... Well, they're doing their thing. If you take the time to look at the film, again, you see his character, even without words, employing techniques not unlike Steve McQueen used to use when he was in a scene but not speaking. That white noise.
Yes.
And it's really just about small movements. He's not trying to steal anybody's thunder, but he is trying to let people know he's there and that stuff's going on with him. And this movie is really where I got the sense this guy is something special. Just to mention, too, Don Cheadle is in this film as well.
Yes.
And he is one of the best out there as well. And I just wanted to mention him, give him a plug, because I like him a lot as well.
Yes. You're listening to Take Two, the movie program on public radio, KCBX, San Luis Obispo, KSBX, Santa Barbara, streaming across the world at kcbx.org. If you'd like to write to Bob or Catherine or me, it's movies@kcbx.org. Also, you can listen to past programs of Take Two by logging on to kcbx.org. Go to Audio Archives, and there's a whole bunch of Take Two programs there. Bob and I need to refresh ourselves at the concession stand. We will be back with more on Philip Seymour Hoffman in just a moment.
I wanna go to the movie show, me and my baby. Come on, let's go. On to the movie show. Let's go. I buy the popcorn as soon as we hit the door. My 2 brothers Bill and Puns sitting in the front row. They bought the candy. We don't need nothing more. I love a movie show, I tell you, in black and white. I don't care what it is. I don't care how small the theater is. I don't care who's playing. I don't care how long they got popcorn and candy bars. Butterfly McQueen, she's gone with the wind. I love the film.
Funds for Take Two, the movie program, have been provided in part by Morin Brothers Automotive, which is newly expanded to better serve their customers. Frida, the diagnostic dog, invites you to check out her new digs at Morin Brothers, servicing Volvo, Saab, and most domestic and Japanese cars.
Gable, all the women out there, the Barrymores and Sidney Poitier. I wanna go to the movie show, me and my baby. Come on, let's go. Morgan Freeman and Edward G. Man and James L. Jones.
We're back on Take Two, the movie program on public radio, KCBX. We're sure glad you are there. Along with me is Robert Gordon Whiteford.
And along with me is James Richard D. And we're talking about Philip Seymour Hoffman. And let's not forget Hank, our projectionist.
We have to find out his middle name.
Hank Lewis Hadley.
All right, we're square now. That's good. Well, our subject tonight, Philip Seymour Hoffman, up for an Oscar for his great work in Capote, and we're running through his incredible filmography and trying to make note that Here's a great actor. He's been doing it for not that long of a time, maybe 16 years or so, but working with some of the best in the biz, not only actors and actresses, but directors. And we're going to continue that overview right now. After Boogie Nights, Philip Seymour Hoffman in 1998 starred in a film called Culture, then Montana, Next Stop Wonderland, The Big Lebowski, and then he came into a very intriguing film by Todd Solondz called Happiness.
Oh boy. Yeah.
A rather sordid film, but interesting nonetheless. And I think here's another role for Philip Seymour Hoffman where he just sort of let it all out. He just courageous in being not a very likable character. Likable, yes, but he has some quirks. And I would say it took courage to star in that film, which is...
That film is definitely I don't know how even to I can't describe it. It's a black comedy unlike anything I have ever seen before or since. Every character in it is utterly despicable in some way or form. But what's interesting about this is not just Philip Seymour Hoffman, but it seems like all the characters in this film, as hideous as they are, there's almost something redeemable, or there's something not redeemable. That word doesn't apply, but there seems something kind of human about all of them that makes it almost... you can't quite bear some of the stuff that goes on.
True. I call it David Lynchian, in the fact that you've got kind of a nice surface, but there's some very dark things underneath the pristine surface.
Absolutely. And Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, extremely dark behind closed doors. I would say to folks, it's a great ensemble cast, great acting. Philip Seymour Hoffman shines brightly in this. But it's probably not for everybody.
I would give it an NC-17,
I think I would, too.
So in 1998, Philip Seymour Hoffman played Alan in Happiness, and then, once again, a move to the more commercial. Amazing, because Happiness, being a kind of a cult film way under the radar, even though it got quite a bit of play in this country, this next film... 1998, he stars with Robin Williams and Patch Adams. So it's interesting how he just he can travel between the two worlds of the independent and the very independent film to the extremely commercial film that will play in the multiplex.
I mean, Jim, you couldn't find two films more radically different in terms of their audience than Happiness and Patch Adams. I mean, I could not imagine anybody coming in looking for Patch Adams and saying, well, I don't have it. Why don't you try Happiness? I couldn't see that. Oh, they'd boil me in oil. I mean, they're totally different audiences.
That is
true. And yet here he is.
Here he is. Well, the next film, Bob, I think is really going to surprise our audiences and our listeners. In 1999, I want to say that this is a film where Philip Seymour Hoffman was, second billed or co-billed with Robert De Niro. And you know how, Bob, you and I talk about films where the film is okay, but this performance is really good, or this direction is good, or, like parts of the film are good. Now, I cannot recommend the entire film of Flawless. Joel Schumacher directed and wrote it. Not one of my favorite directors or writers.
Nor mine.
However, I'll give you the premise of this film. Robert De Niro, a New York cop who has a stroke, and his neighbor is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is a female impersonator. And I've got to tell you, Bob, there's a bunch of plot machinations and kind of overplotted film, but when these two get together in these two roles, it is amazing to watch. And again, here is Hoffman holding his own as a female impersonator with Robert De Niro. The setup is after Robert De Niro has a stroke and he's having speech problems. The Philip Seymour Hoffman character, who is named Rusty. is willing to give him speech lessons, therapy so that he can regain his speech. Well, as you can imagine, the Robert De Niro character is kind of hard-boiled and is the first thing out of his mouth calling Hoffman a fag. And, there's a real tumultuous relationship here. But to see these two go at it in this film, in this not-so-great film, is something else. I mean, I think this truly was Hoffman coming into his own to hold down one of the pivotal roles in a film and not a supporting role.
Right.
Now, I want you to listen to this clip. This is from Flawless from 1999. It is Robert De Niro who kind of mumbles because he has the after effects of a stroke. It is Philip Seymour Hoffman as Rusty, the female impersonator. Now listen to Hoffman's voice and listen to this interaction from Flawless.
Having no trouble with the F sound.
Get out! Get out!
Fine. I told
Fucking
your doctor.
fired?
I told your doctor it would never work.
You talking to Dr. Normal?
Yeah.
Normal?
Yeah. She's a very fine woman. She helped a friend of mine who died of AIDS, Miss Burma. And also, if I was going to teach you, I wanted to make sure I was doing it right, like Anne Bancroft, the miracle worker.
I don't be no fit with a heart of gold.
Honey, you see a crown of thorns on my head? Only rhinestones, sweetheart. I am no brother Teresa. I told you, I need the money. I got big plans.
I'm no brother Teresa. Now that voice, that was Philip Seymour Hoffman as Rusty in Flawless, and he is amazing. I mean, Bob, I was watching some of this today, and I had to sit there and look, and I go, I can't believe this is Philip Seymour Hoffman. Of course, he does have a lot of makeup on. He does have a wig, and he does look like a woman in this, but he disappears completely. And when he puts that voice where I felt like he was, channeling Carol Channing or something, with sort of that, there's the bass in the voice. It was an amazing performance in a film that I would assume that essentially nobody saw.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, here's a role that could very easily have just turned into some throwaway, okay, I'm not going to give this my all. The guy is totally immersed in this part. And obviously, I guess the idea of acting, in doing scenes with De Niro, one of the greatest actors of all time, Philip Seymour Hoffman made his message heard in this film. He came in ready to play, so to speak, and he comes out of it smelling like a rose. I mean, him and De Niro, as you say, Jim, their interplay is about all there is to talk about with this film. But great actors bring a lot even to bad movies. And this movie's bad, but it's not their fault. Philip Seymour Hoffman in particular is incredible in it.
Well, I think it's their performances that really elevate this movie, and I will recommend it just to watch these two great actors go to it. And I've said it before, I say it again, I just go, that can't be him. Is that really him, And so his chameleon, his acting, he can take on any role, and he just disappears. It's again, when I think of people watching him in Capote, I know there are people who moviegoers who just said, "Where have I seen him before? Where have I seen him before?" And they've probably seen him a lot. I want to skip up. He's in Magnolia after Flawless. He was in Magnolia. After that, The Talented Mr. Ripley. Another, bouncing into, the mainstream. And then in 2000, and I want to try to play this clip quickly soon here. I don't want to blab too much, because to compare that voice he had in Flawless, and now here he is in Stayed in Maine. He's a writer, playwright, but he's also going to write the movie. He's kind of mildly dashing. He's in the clip we're going to play from Stayed in Maine, he's been hired to write this movie in this small town, and there's all the craziness that goes behind the scenes of movie making. And he needs a typewriter because he wants to write the movie. Here's a scene from Stayed in Maine. It's a David Mamet film. He goes into a bookstore to buy a typewriter, And here's the same guy who gave you the voice from Flawless. This is from State and Maine.
Okay. Yeah, I want to rent this one.
Why don't you buy it? Only $40.
I had one, but they lost it.
You buy this typewriter, I will get it all spruced up for you, good as new. Better than new, because it has some history.
Other one in history, too. I wrote my play on it.
You wrote a play on it. What play is that?
You never heard of it.
What's it called?
Anguish.
Anguish by Joseph Turner White. You're Joseph Turner White?
That's right.
Afternoon, Annie.
Girls, this man wrote this play.
That a fact? Well, is it a good play?
Yes, Maud, it is. It is a very good play. A very good play indeed.
Well, what's he doing here?
What are you doing here?
Writing the movie.
You're writing the movie?
Yeah.
What's it about?
It's about the quest for purity.
It's Philip Seymour Hoffman as Joseph Turner White, who is the writer of a movie that it's at least one of the main guys is William H. Macy in this film, and Alec Baldwin comes in. Charles Durning is in the film. Really an interesting look behind the scenes of movie making. But there's Philip Seymour Hoffman as the kind of confident but maybe a little elusive writer, as opposed to the female impersonator in Flawless. He's very manly and a very interesting character. And, Bob, I was going to say for our listeners, you could take a couple of Philip Seymour Hoffman movies and do a double take, double feature, where you see him in one film and you see him in another film and you see the incredible transition and metamorphosis that he goes through to do these characters. He is amazing.
And this film it's another terrific ensemble cast. It's a David Mamet film. In fact, that's Rebecca Pidgeon in the scene with him, who is David Mamet's wife, who's in all or most of his films. And you're right. I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman you couldn't get much different in this film compared to his character in Flawless. You couldn't get much different comparing it to his character in Magnolia, which is arguably one of the better films of the 90s as well. And this is a interesting little comedy, and it basically, it's like the big city moviegoers. Hollywood invades this small, I don't know, where was it, a New England town to make this film. Who's the rube here? That's part of the fun. And Philip Seymour Hoffman is right there. Good little film, State and Maine.
And that was in the year 2000. And again, amongst an ensemble cast, Philip Seymour Hoffman really stands out. Now, another, he goes from State and Maine, which got some play, but it was not as big of a commercial success, of course, as Almost Famous, which is what he made in the same year. He played the great rock critic Lester Bangs. What I love about his performance in this film, Bob, is he's got that, he knows his stuff, he knows his music. And he's a good critic, but he's also got that little touch of, self-promotion. It's, the narcissism is there. It's kept under wraps, but, real self-important guy. But he plays it perfectly because you like him and you're attracted to him, and his passion and his energy is, contagious. But he's just perfectly capturing that kind of 70s, 80s guy who's kind of self-important and I know everything about rock and roll.
Absolutely. And Lester Bangs was a legend in his time. And in this film, which is a good movie, I really was surprised how much I enjoyed this movie. His turn as Lester Bangs is just, it's amazing. It was so, at this juncture, I was just so happy to see him portraying Lester Bangs. And it's terrific. In fact, I think we even got a clip from it.
This is a clip from Almost Famous. It is Philip Seymour Hoffman as the rock critic Lester Bangs as he visits a radio station.
Here's a theory for you to disregard completely. Music, true music, not just rock and roll, it chooses you. lives in your car or alone, listening to your headphones, with vast scenic bridges and angelic choirs in your brain. It's a place apart from the vast, benign lap of America.
It's quite an honor to have the world's greatest rock critic and editor of Cream magazine back home in San Diego for a few days. Lester Bangs.
The Doors? Or Jim Morrison? He's a drunken buffoon, posing as a poet.
I like the Doors.
Give me the Guess Who. Come on, they got the courage to be drunken buffoons, which makes them poetic. Give me some white light, white heat. Iggy Pop! Amen! I just put this on. This isn't on your playlist
Lester,
either.
Don't you think it's a little bit early for that?
Not for me.
Okay, well, that was Lester Bangs. This is Alice Wisdom, and here's Iggy Pop.
Well, the tone there with Philip Seymour Hoffman as Lester Bangs, I mean, you got to take his word for it, what's good and bad in the world of rock and roll. I like the Doors, but
Oh, man, what a great performance. I mean, he just really captured that. And this is probably like an era where he was probably just a young, probably just a young kid. I mean, maybe when he was 10 or so, this stuff was going on. Yet here it is, years later, he nailed it. He nailed it.
He did. I mean, the look, the feel. What I love playing about playing these clips, Bob, is I'm hoping that our listeners will hear these real different voice tones that he gets, just different inflections. I mean, utterly different characters that you can hear through his voice. And Almost Famous, he makes a great Lester Bangs.
Well, what's interesting about this role, Jim, is that gone is the vulnerability of Scotty.
Completely gone.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's unbelievably sure of himself. I mean, this is the polar opposite. And he's believable as this as well.
But here also he lets it kind of hang out, because I think he gives it that touch of just sort of, everything about rock and roll. You listen to everything, and you're a little bit obnoxious, but not too obnoxious, But he just keeps it in tow. I think it's that kind of a self-promoter, kind of a rock promoter as well, and he just nails it. He's utterly convincing. I would think, watching him in Almost Famous, I think, maybe this film was made in, the late 70s or the 80s or so, I mean, 'cause
absolutely,
it captures that spirit. Well, let's move on. We have, we're going to play a clip from a film he made after Almost Famous. It's called Love, Liza. It's a very special film, very small film, but also giving you an idea of some of the other films where he bounces from the very independent and way below the radar film and into something that's in the multiplexes. Love, Liza is a film he starred in, written by his brother, based on a play, and it's a very introspective, very almost hard to watch film about a man, which we'll tell you about, who has a great tragedy in his life, but we'll tell you about that in a second. He again teamed up with Paul Thomas Anderson in 2002 with Punch Drunk Love. Then, once again, in the mainstream, he was in Red Dragon. And during our break, Hank said, Red Dragon, not a great film, but Philip Seymour Hoffman, great in that film.
I concur. He's the only thing I can remember about that movie.
Wow. After Red Dragon in 2002, he was also working with Spike Lee in 25th Hour. Another great film, really showcasing him as the lead in Owning Mahoney. We'll have a clip for that in just a moment. And then he, here again, in a very big film, Cold Mountain in 2003. Along Came Polly in 2004. He was on, I guess it was I don't know if there was a movie on Strangers with Candy or not. I know it was a TV show. Empire Falls, the TV movie that you were mentioning, which was very good. And then Capote right up to the present time. He's also going to be appearing in Mission Impossible 3, which is in production, will be out this summer.
Boy, oh boy.
Well, here's the big bounce here. Let's go back to the film we were mentioning right after Almost Famous. I mean, here's the guy who's in the current Tom Cruise movie, but back in 2002, he starred in a film called Love, Liza. What is remarkable about this film is he pretty much anchors the entire film. He is the guy. The premise for this film is Philip Seymour Hoffman has to endure his wife's suicide. his wife leaves him a note which he refuses to read, and it is pretty much the unraveling of this character, and he is amazing in this role. I thought it was tough to watch. I thought it was courageous. You were mentioning, Bob, there are some scenes in this film, as he's dealing with this torment. When we talk about a film like this, Bob, it's sort of like, we're talking about how hard it is and disturbing and how introspective and sad it is. But, it's a great film. It's a very moving film. It's a very human film. And this is a case where you can see Philip Seymour Hoffman just holding the film down with his incredible acting.
Jim, this film, it begins with the wife's suicide, and then it's a journey for Philip Seymour Hoffman to find the courage to read this note he left her. And he's a likable person. He's a decent guy. And he can't comprehend the depth of his own grief. And he really goes deep in exploring his grief, his sadness, his heartbreak. And it's tough to watch, but it is interesting. It's a fascinating film. He even emulates the method his wife used to kill herself.
That's right.
Quite a bit in the film. And he literally takes himself not just toward spiritual death, but toward actual death.
Yes. Well, he flirts with it pretty much throughout the film.
Yeah, and it's what's interesting is it's such an insular ride for him. The effect he has on other people in the quote-unquote normal world that come in contact with him is quite fascinating. That's where the horror really shows.
Yes.
And I think we have a clip.
This is Philip Seymour Hoffman from the film Love Liza. This is a man who is broken, he is disconnected, and unfortunately, if there's any person who kind of wants to connect with him, it creates problems. This is from Love Liza.
This is totally inappropriate.
What?
Oh no, not this.
Not what?
Sitting here.
Right.
I was trying to preface what I was about to say.
You gonna say something inappropriate?
Totally inappropriate.
Totally inappropriate.
But I'm gonna say it anyway. I'm attracted to you.
Yeah, I should.
Listen, I didn't mean it like that.
Because.
Oh, you don't have to say anything. Absolutely nothing. It's just that I...
Can I?
That was totally inappropriate. Totally. Please let it go.
I need to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
I'll be right back. I want to talk.
Oh, we should.
Okay, yeah.
Now, unfortunately, what you're missing with our radio movie clips here is the fact that when the character in this film tells Philip Seymour Hoffman that she's attracted to him, he utterly falls apart. You see him look on his face like there's total despair. And it's amazing how, any sort of connection with anybody is going to be problems during this time in his life. But you're just with the cameras on him, and you just see him, run away completely from a situation here of someone wanting to get close.
I just realized listening to this clip, Jim, how much I hate the word inappropriate. Ugh.
Well,
I don't know. It's unrelated, but...
That was from Love Liza, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's brother wrote that play, and he holds down that film amazingly well. We have time for one more, a great film which talks about not only the banking business, but there's interconnections with gambling, and this is a really great film starring Philip Seymour Hoffman from 2003. It's called Owning Mahoney. And it is, if you want to see a great Hoffman film, check this one out. It's another chameleon performance where he's kind of this very straight, very, you call him a suit in this film. He's got a little mustache. He seems kind of frumpy and nerdy. And again, a completely unique role from what we've seen before from Philip Seymour Hoffman. Here is a clip from Owning Mahoney from 2003.
What are you doing here?
Well, we got a little concerned when you didn't show. We thought maybe you were sick or something.
No, you can't be here. Right, this is not the racetrack.
How much you got for his banker?
I told you, I need a day or two.
That was on Monday, Dad. This is Friday.
Look, guys, I'm having a bad run, so what? Right, just give me 5,000 more.
5,000 more?
Yes.
Well, if you can't look after yourself, I'm going to have to do it for you.
Right, what are you saying?
I'm saying that we're going to have to come up with a payment plan. Will you give me a certain amount of money on a certain day, and until you're paid up, you do not play?
You can't do that.
I can do it. I'm doing it now.
I thought we had a relationship here.
We have a relationship, and that is why I'm shutting you down.
For a few grand?
It's not a few grand, Dan. It's 10,300.
All right, so what am I supposed to do? Go to the racetrack and watch?
It's Philip Seymour Hoffman from the film Owning Mahoney, a very interesting view of banking and not very legal banking and lots of gambling. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our overview of Philip Seymour Hoffman. Our congratulations to him for getting the Oscar nomination for Capote. And I would have to say that if you are an aspiring actor out there, grab some of Philip Seymour Hoffman's films. You'll see a true great. And I agree with you, Bob. I think he's one of the greatest current actors in cinema. And, after Capote, I wonder what will happen if he'll have as meaty roles as he's had prior. I hope so. I hope he has a stellar career, and it's a very, shall we say, a short career so far, only 15, 16 years in the biz. I think he's got a lot ahead of him. I think we're going to see a lot more great performances from Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I agree, Jim. I'm very excited. I don't think I'll be seeing Mission Impossible 3 anytime soon, but I'm really looking forward to his future films, and they're going to be good. I just know they are.
Big thank you to Hank, our projectionist tonight. My name is Jim Dee. I want to thank you for listening to Take Two, the movie program. We will be back next Monday at 6:30 with more of Take Two. Good night.